Today's video is something I have never done before. I am so excited for this and slightly terrified. Thank you for stopping by Lavender and Lace. I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my viewers that come and see me each week. And hello, if you are new here, thank you for stopping by today. I hope you guys enjoy this Christmas inspiration. So I am participating in a Christmas collab with a couple of my YouTube friends, and that is Wendy from White Sparrow Living and Emily from Farm Charm Chic. Thank you guys for including me in this very special video. I can't wait to see what both of you create. Now, for the terrifying part, I got this tiny little envelope in the mail from Wendy, and it has several cards in here that are going to tell me either a color, a Christmas song, a shape, different things like that. These cards are inspiring all of the DIYs for today's video. So let's see what I have in this envelope. Who knew that something so small could be so terrifying? Okay. Oh, and she sent me a very sweet today's prayer card. It says each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. 1 Peter 4 and 10. Thank you, Wendy. I will stick that up on my craft board over here, and that will be inspiration for each day. Okay, item is snowflakes. That's not too bad. I think I can come up with something for that item. So one DIY will need to include snowflakes. The next one is a song, and that is Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Another good one. Coming up with ideas. Color or pattern. Pink and green. And style is farmhouse, and you guys know that is right in my wheelhouse. So I am very excited about these, and I can't wait to get started on these projects. Of course, I'll take a couple of days to figure out what I'm going to do, and in your time it will just be a couple of seconds. So let's get crafting. My mom has had these angels since she was a little girl. I think her grandpa got them for her and maybe paid either 10 cents or a quarter. I can't remember how much. But they are the inspiration for this first project. I picked up some of these mini tree cones at Hobby Lobby. You get 6 in a pack for $4, and of course that's 50% off. And I also had some of these wood beads, and these were white, so I wanted to paint those a skin color, so I just used this light mocha color from Apple Barrel, and I did 2 coats of that paint to get the complete coverage that I wanted. Of course, if you had just the natural colored wood beads, you wouldn't have to paint them. I just didn't have any that I wanted to use for this project that I thought would be the right size for this. So I just glued those onto the top of my cones, and you guys save yourself a little bit of time. If you have to paint your beads, go ahead and glue those first and then paint them. That would just be a little bit easier for you. And I also have a lot of this tulle in my stash, and it all came from the Dollar Tree, and I picked this up at different times of the year. And I started with this white one just as my base color, and I did probably 4 to 5 layers of that tulle just to get the coverage that I wanted. I didn't want to see that cardboard cone underneath, and I didn't want to have to paint those. So this is what I decided to do, and it also just gives a really pretty effect under the main color of the tulle that I will be using. So I just trimmed off the size that I would need to wrap around the body of my angel, and just used a small amount of hot glue to tack that down right underneath the bead. And then I just wrapped that around the cone, tried to hold that secure so it wouldn't get loose. and make sure that it would fit around my cone as well and be a nice fit for the dress for my angel. And then just tack that down on the bottom with some hot glue. And I also added just a little bit more around the edge just to make sure I had all of those layers glued down. And if you don't have any of this tulle, you could also use some fabric. That would work as well, because while I was making these, Graceland decided to do a woodland fairy and she used fabric and hers turned out super cute. But once I had all of that glued down, I just trimmed off the excess. And originally I wanted to leave a little bit of that tulle longer than the actual cardboard, but it wouldn't sit up correctly. It just kept falling over. So I did have to go back and just trim that even with the bottom of my cardboard tree. And for my main color, I used a red glittery tulle for my first angel. And I just repeated all of those same steps that I did for the base color and that white tulle. And I just kept checking to see if all of my layers would cover up that white the way I wanted it and that I would have the finished look that I wanted. And I just cut that off once I had what I needed. And again, just used a little bit of hot glue to tack that down and wrap that around the body of my angel. And I already have several ideas to create some more of these throughout the year. So I hope you guys will subscribe if you haven't done so already, so you don't miss the future angels or maybe fairies that I will have coming out soon. And these would make such sweet Christmas gifts this year. I love how these turn out, and I can't wait until you guys see the finished product. But once I had my main color glued down, I just trimmed that off on the bottom as well. Tried to get that as even as possible so my angel would stand up straight. And I contemplated not giving her any arms because she was cute as is without any, but I found some matching colors of pipe cleaners in my stash. So I just used this red one for my red angel and just kind of wrap that around where the bead and the cone meet. And I just trimmed that off a little bit, and it looks like arms, and it also looks like it's matching sleeves for her dress. So I thought that was a really cute touch. And I had some teeny tiny little wood beads that I just glued on the ends of the pipe cleaner to make some hands for my angels. And I like the way that her arms are uplifted like she's praising God and so thankful for the gift of Jesus, and that is why we celebrate Christmas each year. And just to give my angels some hair, I used some yarn. It took me a while to decide what I wanted to do for the hair on these angels, and I thought this was just the easiest way to go about that. So I just cut off, I think I did 6 strands on the top and just glued those on with some hot glue. And then I cut some other strips as well and just glued that along the back of her head. And that just helps to hide that hot glue there as well, and that will also cover up kind of the twist that you have in your pipe cleaner. And I believe I used 7 to 8 pieces just to cover the back of my angel's head. Of course, the number that you use will depend on the size bead that you wind up using for the angel's head. And this is the very tedious part of this project, but it is well worth your effort. I just love the finished results of this. I just took each strand of that yarn and unraveled each piece for that, and it just makes your angel look like she has really pretty curly hair. And once you have all of your yarn untwisted, you kind of just want to comb that out and give your angel just a little bit of a haircut just to even everything up. And this is fun, you guys. You can make this any length that you want. Give her any style of hairdo that you want. Hot glue makes really good hairspray. And for the halos, I had some of this, I think it was 24 gauge beading wire, and I just shaped a small halo to glue onto the top of each of my angels. You just have to twist that wire and just hold that in place once you have your halo shape. And I did use some jewelry pliers just to help me get that wire pressed down a little bit and it wouldn't be sticking out and poke me or anything. And I just put that on the back of my angel's head and glued that down with just a little bit of hot glue. And I did have to hold this in place until it's set up. Otherwise, my halo wouldn't be straight and it would be kind of lopsided on my angel's head. And I wanted to give this angel a little bit more embellishment and add to her dress. So I had another piece of this tulle and it had some gold feathers on it, and I thought this was absolutely gorgeous. So I just cut down a small piece and glued that onto the back, and also just kind of scrunched that up and held it into place at the bottom of my angel, and just tacked that down with just a small amount of hot glue. And I did that on the other side as well. And I did trim this as well. It was just a little bit too long, but this one I was able to leave a little bit longer than the actual dress, and it just looks like kind of a flowing robe or something that I like to think angels might wear. And I wanted to keep these very similar to the original inspiration, so I just drew on the exact same features for her face. Just used some fine tip Sharpies to do that, and I made their mouths look like they are singing their praises to God. And I found these angel wing cutouts, and you guys be sure that you check the description box because I will link any patterns or supplies that I can there, so you can check those out and recreate these angels if you want to. So I just cut those out with some of this glitter cardstock, and I did find that at Dollar Tree. And I did several of the designs because I wasn't sure exactly which ones would look the best for my angels, but I did make these about 4 inches wide. So I just kind of played around and picked the wings that I thought would look best for each of my angels. And I just glued those down on the back with some hot glue. And that is it for these angels. I absolutely love how these turned out. I had so much fun making these, and I hope you guys love them as much as I do. And every time I look at them, I will remember putting out my mom's angels at Christmas, which I still get to do that. We help her decorate for Christmas every year. But let me know what you guys think about these angels. I am so excited to be a part of this Christmas collab with these two amazing crafters, Wendy from White Sparrow Living and Emily from Farm Charm Chic. If you guys haven't found their channels yet, I hope you will check them out. Be sure that you check out their videos as well in the playlist and tell them I said hello. You can find tons of inspiration on each of their channels. They are both super talented and have beautiful creations. Wendy is very inspiring and always puts a smile on my face every time I watch her videos, and I get so much inspiration from watching Emily's videos, and I just love both of their styles. We all love farmhouse, so be sure that you guys check those out. And let's get back to our Christmas DIYs. I grabbed some of these styrofoam discs at Dollar Tree, as well as one of their larger vases that they carry. This styrofoam disc will work as the perfect base for my vase. Try to say that 5 times fast. And I also used one of the cleaning cloths that you can find in the automotive section. And these cloths do have two different sides. One is a little bit softer and fuzzier than the other, and that other side is a little bit smoother. So I just cut down a small square big enough to wrap around my styrofoam disc, and I wanted that fuzzier side to be out. And I also just cut off that tag just to make this a little bit easier to glue down onto that styrofoam round. And I just used hot glue to do that. Just pulled one of the corners first and held that in place, and I just kind of folded and pinched that cloth as I worked my way around, and I tried to get all of the edges even and no wrinkles in my cloth. And just continue that all the way around your styrofoam until you have that completely covered. And I wanted the bottom of my styrofoam disc to be level, so I just cut off any of that excess cleaning cloth and just used a little bit of extra hot glue here and there just to make sure that I had everything tacked down. And I also had some of this green floral foam in my stash, and I picked this up at Walmart. And I wanted several different shapes and sizes of that styrofoam. I'm going to be building kind of a Christmas snowy village inside the glass part of this project. And while I was cutting that and filling this bottom portion up, I did put that vase on there periodically just to make sure everything was going to fit on the inside of that. I didn't want to glue everything down and then not be able to put my vase on top of my little, I guess we could call this a snow globe. It's just going to be a little bit larger than what you typically see. So once I had all of my foam pieces cut out and I was happy with the size and the shape, and I had those placed where I wanted them, I just started gluing all of those down with some hot glue. And I took some more of that cleaning cloth and just put that over all of my floral foam pieces and just cut off another piece big enough to where I knew that I would be able to glue that down to the foam, and it would still be able to glue around the bottom of each of those foam pieces as well and not see any of that green color. And I saw something similar to this at Hobby Lobby, so that is where my inspiration came from for this project. I just wanted to see if I could recreate this mainly with Dollar Tree supplies and things that I already had on hand. And of course, my version is a lot cheaper than the one that I saw at Hobby Lobby. And it's smaller and it fits perfectly in those smaller areas of your home just to add a little bit more Christmas decor. And once I had all of that cloth glued down to my foam pieces, again, I just cut off that excess around the bottom, making sure that I left enough extra so I would be able to glue that down and be sure to hide all of my floral foam. And again, I just kept putting my vase on there to make sure that it was going to fit and that I wouldn't have any issues being able to put that on once I get this piece completely finished. And I did have a couple of areas where that cleaning cloth was sticking up just a little bit, so I just took some extra hot glue and made sure to tack that down. And I found this wooden building set at my thrift store last year, and I've just been pulling pieces out of this to use for different projects. I couldn't find houses small enough for this, so I decided to use several of these wooden blocks and just match them together with some of the decorative pieces that I thought would look like the roof on a house, and I just glued those together with some hot glue. And if you don't have wood pieces like this, you could also use cardboard and just make your house shapes that way. That would be another easy option. Or maybe you have some of the small like fairy village pieces that you can find at Dollar Tree just hanging around. Those would be good as well. And for my pink color for this project, I did mix the ballet slipper pink with the sandstone chalk paint from Waverly. I thought that pink was just a little bit too much like a baby pink or like a baby shower, so I wanted to kind of just tone that down a little bit with that brown color from that sandstone. So I just mixed those together until I was happy with the color that I had, and I painted both of my houses with that pink color, and I did just a couple of coats to get the coverage that I wanted. And that building set also had a couple of trees, so I decided to paint those pink as well. I'm not a huge fan of pink decor for Christmas, but I was pleasantly surprised with how cute this one turned out. You guys will have to let me know when you see the final reveal. And I also had a smaller wooden finial in my stash, and I get these at Hobby Lobby. I did have to trim off just an extra part on the bottom. I painted that pink, and I also had one of these metal trucks in my stash, and you can find those at Hobby Lobby as well. And I did a couple of coats of my pink color on my truck as well. And I wanted my little Christmas village to be snowy, so I took some of my white hot glue and just added that to the top of each of my houses. And this just kind of softened up all of those edges on those blocks as well and made it look more like an actual house in a village. And you can kind of just tap when you add your hot glue to your piece and get that to look a little bit more like snow would actually look on the roof when it was kind of melty. And before I glued these down, I just placed them where I wanted them and made sure that they would fit on the inside of my vase as well. And just used some hot glue to glue those down to the areas that I wanted them in my little Christmas village. And I did a dry fit with all of my other little embellishments before I glued them down. So I just used hot glue to glue everything, and I put down my truck and the two trees, and I also added some snow on the top of those pink trees as well. And then I put a little bit around the base of my houses, and that just added a little bit extra detail, and it also covered up that hot glue. And I had these mini wreaths in my stash. You can get these at Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby. And I just removed that red ribbon and replaced it with a pink bow, of course, to go with my pink and green theme for this project. And I made one for each of my houses and just glued those to the center portion of the roof with some hot glue. And I also thought it would be cute to add some pink beads if you wanted to on your greenery. I just didn't have any that were the correct size for this, but that would be another option that you could do. And I had some of these small bottle brush trees, and these did come from Hobby Lobby, but you can also find those at Dollar Tree. And I just stuck those in here and there. And I also, again, kept putting that vase on just to make sure everything would fit before I glued that down. And my white one wouldn't fit where I wanted it to with that base, so I just cut that off and tucked it in behind my little truck, and I think this is turning out absolutely adorable, you guys. I'm super happy with this project so far. And just to give this a little bit of light, I added some fairy lights around each of those trees. And I took my time adding these fairy lights because I only wanted them around the trees. So I just wrapped them around each tree, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times. And then I just tucked in that extra wire around the houses, tried to hide that as best as I could. And just for an extra pop of pink, I added just a strip of ribbon around the base for my snow globe. And I didn't want the top of my vase to look so plain, so I did glue down that finial that I painted with some E6000 and some hot glue. And I also took just a few sprigs of greenery that I had in my stash and some pine cones and glued that on the side of my finial just as an extra embellishment. And I thought this was a very cute touch. And I had found some of these clear acrylic snowflakes at Hobby Lobby, and I added that to the top as well. I just thought this would be an extra little sparkle. And I just made a sweet little bow and glued that right at the base of my finial. And this one is finished. I think this is just beautiful, you guys. And I think it may change my mind about pink decor for Christmas. I think maybe I need to add some more pieces like this in my decor this year. Let me know what you guys think about this one. I love the wood selection that you can find at Walmart, and I like to pick these up every once in a while when I have a specific project in mind. And when I found this one, I knew it was perfect for this. And I love that it is already distressed and has that farmhouse vibe. And I also picked up several of these mini grapevine wreaths at Hobby Lobby. I used 10 of those for this project. And before I started with this, I did want to add my sawtooth hanger on the back just so that I would be able to hang this once it is finished. And if you find the ones that you can already just nail in, that would be a lot easier than using these teeny tiny nails to get your hanger attached. That's just what I had on hand, so I went ahead and used that for this project. And once I had my hanger on the back, I did lay out all of my little wreaths just to make sure that they would fit where I wanted them to and be able to put those in place and look like a Christmas tree. And I pulled out several different things that I wanted to wrap around my wreaths just to give them a little bit of decoration. And I started with this jingle bell garland. You can find this at Hobby Lobby right now. I can't remember the length on this, but it is $5 when it is on sale. So I thought this would be perfect to use as embellishment for Christmas projects this year. And I also had some red pitberry garland in my stash, so I just started using some smaller pieces of both of those and wrapped them around a couple of my grapevine wreaths just to see which I liked better, if I wanted to use both or if I wanted to use just one of these. And I didn't use any hot glue for this wired garland. It stayed really well in those wreaths. So here's what the jingle bell garland and the pitberries look like on those wreaths. I really didn't like the way that those jingle bells looked, so I took those off and I decided to use some of this green ribbon instead. You guys let me know which one that you would have went with. But I wound up using my red pitberries and this green ribbon. So I did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I did 6 of the wreaths with the red pitberries, and then I did 4 with that green ribbon. And once I had all of those wrapped, I just used some hot glue and glued those down to my sign. And I also picked up a bundle of these already pre-cut sticks. You can find them at Hobby Lobby right now in all of their Christmas, their little craft section. And it was the perfect size and shape to use as the trunk for my Christmas tree. So I just put that at the bottom with some hot glue. And I have several different kinds of ribbon and fabric in my stash, so I wanted to use that instead of a star on the top of my Christmas tree. I thought this would just give it a little bit of an extra added farmhouse vibe. So I just made some simple bows and also just put a couple of scrap pieces of fabric behind that red and cream colored buffalo check ribbon. And I just glued that to the center on the top of my Christmas tree. And I did attach that with kind of a bread tie, or this may have been from trash bags. I like to keep those on hand and use them when I'm making bows and things like that. And then I just took some more of this really cute Merry Christmas ribbon and glued that to the center of the buffalo check one. And I loved that jingle bell garland, so I wanted to add that somehow. So I did just a couple of little sprigs on the top and glued that in between each of my bows. And I just used my finger to kind of give me that coil and spiral that I like. Just dovetailed the ends of my ribbon. And that is it for this piece of Christmas decor. Let me know what you guys think about this one. I just love all of the rustic farmhouse vibes from this DIY. I picked up some of this tracing paper and the tracing pencils that you can find at Hobby Lobby. You can also find these on Amazon. And I have been wanting to do some embroidery again. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, and I found some snowflake patterns that I liked. I just found these on Google, and I just printed those out onto that tracing paper. And I just used one of those iron-on transfer pencils and just traced over my pattern. Of course, if you want your design to be in a specific direction, you'll need to reverse that. I didn't have to worry about that since I was just doing these snowflakes. But just keep that in mind if you have a different design that you want to embroider. And also, if you don't know how to do embroidery, I have another option for you. So I will show you guys that in just a little bit. And when you are tracing your pattern, you do want to make sure that your marks are pretty dark. I went over each of these probably 2 or 3 times just to make sure that this would print well onto my fabric. And I just cut out each of my snowflakes so I would be able to iron those on individual pieces of fabric. And this is just some scrap drop cloth that I had in my stash. I picked this up from Amazon several years ago, and I have used it for lots of different projects, so it is well worth your money. And I just cut those down to the size that I would need to fit into these embroidery hoops, and those are 4 inches in diameter. And I just ironed each piece of my fabric and then pinned on my pattern that I wanted to iron on. And I just ironed that on, and I had my iron on almost the highest setting, but no steam for this. And you just want to go back and forth over your pattern, maybe for 2 or 3 minutes. And I like to pull up my pattern and just make sure that is printing well before I take that off completely. And I was really happy with how this printed, and it would be so fun. You could do this with coloring pages or just all kinds of things. The possibilities would be endless with this tracing paper and those transfer pencils. And then I just placed each piece of my fabric into my embroidery hoops, and I tried to get those centered as best as I could. And when you are doing embroidery, you want to make sure that you pull your fabric very tightly. You don't want it to be loose. It will just make it a lot easier if that is pulled tight. It just helps you with your stitching. And I like to use, well, for this particular project, I used 4 strands of my embroidery floss. Normally I use 3, but I just like the way this looked better with those 4 strands. So I just removed 2 strands from this piece of embroidery floss. And you don't want it to get too long or it will get knotted up while you are stitching. So I just threaded that through my needle and just knotted one end of that and started stitching each of my snowflake patterns. And this was a very basic stitch. This was just the simple back stitch. If you guys would like a more in-depth embroidery tutorial, just let me know in the comments. I have been kind of toying around with the idea of doing one of those for the winter. This is just something that I enjoy doing, and this is a project that you could do while you have your feet up, sitting on the couch, watching a Christmas movie, and it just makes the time go by a little bit faster that way. And I did just remove those and wash them once I had all of these stitched. And I was not very happy with the removal of that pencil. I could not get all of that out of the fabric. It said to use cold water and dish soap, but I couldn't get it out completely. So just keep that in mind if you decide to use those. And then I just trimmed off any of that excess fabric around my hoop and just glued that on the inner part of my ring with some hot glue. And I took just one of those inner portions of the embroidery hoop and just traced out a circle in another piece of that drop cloth, and I just cut that out. This is just an easy way that you can kind of cover up and hide those stitches that are on the back side of your project. And I just thought this would be a nice finished look for this. And these would be a great gift for Christmas as well. And all you have to do is simply add a ribbon or something to the top of these to make them an ornament. And I found some of this garland. This has teeny tiny little snowflakes on it. This was in the miniature section at Hobby Lobby, and I thought these would be really cute to add to each of my hoops as well. Just a little bit of extra decoration. And if you don't know how to embroider, just grab you some puffy paint. This is super easy, and you can just use that design that you ironed on as your template and just go over that with your paint. And I actually think I think I like the puffy paint better because it just gives this kind of a 3D effect, and it's just really pretty. So I may do several more of these with some different colors of that puffy paint. And that is it for these snowflake ornaments. I love how these turned out, and these would be really cute to put on your gifts as well this year for Christmas. Let me know what you guys think about these, and I would love to know if you already know how to embroider. Thank you so much for watching today. Please let me know which one of these projects is your favorite. I hope you will consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Give me a thumbs up and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. And make sure that you check out the playlist in the description box, and it will also be pinned in the comments. I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you in the next one.